Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you in the name of Act.Now from Vienna. We are three founders of a kind of initiative. We act internationally, as you see that we're here now in Athens, and we operate above any party lines, which is important. And this is our way of the founders, Andre Heller, you see here, with Elke Zuckermann and myself, to contribute to dialogue and understanding and hopefully to stability and democracy, as we at some point a year ago sat together and said, hey guys, we need to think of something. If our grandchildren ask us one day, hey guys, you saw what was happening, back then, what did you do? So we said we have to do something. And so what we do is we initiate projects and conferences for a respectful and appreciative social coexistence. I won't be much longer. The first panel for me was very fascinating with the many opinions and what you don't get from the normal media reporting is the individual situation the actors are in. I mean, not the movie actors, but the people who have to act on the situations they are in, who are the mayors and politicians. I will give over right now to Hannes Swoboda, our host and curator, for his statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think most of you have been present during the first panel, so I don't have to speak much. But let me bring to you my conclusions. First, the agreement, let's call it agreement. Deal certainly is not a very suitable word for that. Agreement between the EU and Turkey, and of course including Greece, is not a good one, but it's the best one we could reach for a specific problem. It's not for refugees or for migration as a whole, but for the specific problem of crossing between Turkey and Greece. Secondly, the lack of implementation is due specifically to European countries failing for relocation and for resettlement. Thirdly, it is absolutely true, and I think the agreement, and we demanded it in the European Parliament since many years, that we need legal ways of coming to European Union. I don't think that it will abolish any kind of illegal activities, but it has to be implemented by legal ways to come into the European Union. And that, of course, needs a very broad consensus inside EU and should be done. So it's rather of implementing what was in the core of it, of the agreement, and that means helping also Greece. There's a lack of support for Greece or lack of acceptance by Greece of the support offered. It's interesting that a lot of bureaucratic obstacles are still here, because the agreement was not an agreement on a broad, agreement by many countries, but was brought forward, let's be honest, by very few people, and Gerald Knaus is one of them behind that. But again, the alternative, the so-called Plan B, is the worst we could see in Europe. That is a breakdown of any kind of human rights standards concerning refugees, of asylum standards, etc. So we should, with all criticism of the agreement, we should be clear what is the alternative. So criticize the agreement, implement it in the way it was thought of, and that means relocation and resettlement. And the last point I want to say, because there was one question from the colleague about Turkey refugees. Europe has a long tradition of accepting people who have been persecuted in Turkey because of, mostly because of military coups, but whatever else. And I think it's absolutely clear that, and it maybe sounds strange that on the one hand we have an agreement with Turkey concerning refugees from Iraq, from Syria and other countries, and at the same time, of course, we have to be ready to take people who are politically persecuted in Turkey if they come and if they look for asylum. So the asylum procedure, of course, has to be open, of course, also for people from Turkey. Now this is, and this is my last point, is a deviation, because normally you have a country is safe or is not safe. And that's also the legal position. But I agree with the interpretation, which I discussed, of course, also with Professor Novak, one of the major experts on this issue, what Gerald now said. De facto, we have to recognize you can be safe for some people and not safe for other people. This is a very strange and new situation, but we cannot say because Turkey is a safe country or will de facto be accepted as a safe country that we don't take refugees from Turkey. If they are Kurdish origin or not Kurdish origin, that's the same. And I think we have to be prepared for that and make it very clear to Turkey, our agreement with you does not prevent us to open asylum procedures if somebody from Turkey itself, Turkish people, are coming and asking for asylum. Kati.
We opened up a whole new debate, so for me, I think that the question that is asked, of course, a lot, especially looking at the recent events in Turkey, is the question I immediately get, should we stop the deal now? I think there are already, of course, many NGOs who never liked the deal, many political parties who never liked it, and of course this question is, I think, the first question on any TV or radio interview I've been giving over the last 5 days. And then I asked, why? Are there no 3 million refugees anymore in Turkey? Don't these people deserve also financial support from the European Union? Should we stop helping Greece set up its asylum procedure? So I think in general thinking that we can go back to the times before that smugglers are deciding how many people are arriving on each day. This is really not the answer to what's happening in Turkey. I think we must continue to help both the countries in the region, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, in dealing with the refugee influx. And perhaps the thing we should stop, what we were discussing in the first panel this morning, is also formally saying that we are sending back refugees to Turkey. Of course, there was already a readmission agreement between Greece and Turkey for 2 years. I think it's correct that those people who enter the EU, who are not refugees, who are not asking for asylum, and who don't have a legal, and who don't have a visa to stay in the European Union, of course we are returning people. It's not an open border Europe, but for refugees, having this one-to-one, which is part of the deal, saying only we resettle one Syrian for a Syrian which is returned, I think it's time to get rid of this part of the deal. And then we also acknowledge that I think Turkey is the only country in the world where we can now say perhaps it is safer for refugees than for its own population. This is the difference between Turkey as a safe third country, meaning safe for refugees, or Turkey as a safe country, meaning safe for all its population. And I very much hope that the picture that Hannes has been painting will not happen, because that means a major crackdown on fundamental rights in Turkey, which is an EU candidate country. And I really don't want to see the day that from a country with which we are negotiating membership, we also see a large influx of refugees coming. And that is my last point. I think that is my lesson for what the EU for the last 10 years in its relationship with Turkey failed, is to really, genuinely commit to rule of law, democracy promotion, especially also with the EU-Turkey deal. Instead of standing up with the Democrats in Turkey, standing on their side, encouraging the government to find a solution, for instance, for the situation in the southeast of Turkey, where 500,000 people by now are displaced. This is in Turkey itself. We rather looked away and were silent about what's happening in Turkey. And of course, in the long term, I think it's very much in the interest of both the Turkish population and the EU to have a more or less democratic, stable government in Turkey. And this is the lesson I take from it, that we should have put that on #1 priority from the start. And I very much hope the EU leaders will do that as of now on. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Let me just make 4 quick remarks that I think that are most important for Greece. Because I think while the EU-Turkey deal or agreement or statement was mainly negotiated between a small group initially, led by the Dutch EU presidency and Germany and the European Commission with Turkey, it is Greece that is actually the country in the EU that is the most concerned. Now, this is because first, Plan B, the alternative to this working, is to sort out the problem at the expense of Greece. This is not theory. This is what EU leaders have said in March. You might remember there was an interior minister of a Central European EU member country who said, well, we've just redrawn the border of Europe. We just draw the border of Europe north of Greece. And there was a mobilization to send border guards, soldiers, police to the Greek northern border to close it off. This is actually Plan B for a lot of European leaders. The idea is, and we've criticized this for many months, as the Nauru strategy. Nauru is a little island that is an independent state that Australia uses for everybody who arrives by boat. They get taken to Nauru. And then they have an asylum process that takes for a very long time. Conditions are very unattractive. The result is very few people go by boat to Australia. In 2014, it was 200-something people. Greece would be the Nauru for Europe. But Greece is not an island. And for the European legal system, refugee protection, the idea that you create inside the EU a place where conditions for refugees are so bad that they prefer to stay outside is the most cynical and disastrous and damaging strategy. So this we need to avoid. The EU-Turkey deal, agreement or statement is an alternative, but to really work, 3 things are needed. First, the EU needs to get serious about helping the Greek asylum service, or rather Europeanizing the resolution of the asylum claims of people on the Greek islands. This was vaguely talked about, but this was very badly implemented. There should be an EU mission with 300 caseworkers, well organized, with a mission head on the islands, with, many journalists have been there. There aren't even press people who can answer questions, critical questions by journalists, by visitors. There needs to be a credible, strong, competent, well-managed mission where everybody who's on the islands gets an interview fast, a serious interview, and there are credible procedures, and people are not stuck in the islands for the next 2 years, which is currently the prospect for the non-Syrians. They can't apply, they can't move out, they're not sent back, they're stuck. Now, if this is an EU mission, then the EU should also take responsibility for the cost and for relocating those who get asylum. This seems so obvious. This is what Europe should also offer to Italy. Why should Italy be overrun with its asylum service? Any country in the EU should have the right to appeal, to invite. And my hope is that the Greek Prime Minister, the Greek government, will go to Brussels and say, look, you talk about European solutions, that's what we need. Second, there needs to be an EU special representative, an envoy, somebody high level, to constantly be on the plane between Brussels, EU capitals, Athens, and Ankara. And to work and ensure that the Turks give not just guarantees on paper, but transparent procedures so that we can know for sure that anybody who is returned from Greece to Turkey is safe in Turkey. This is a question of checking, convincing, evidence. Don't take it on faith, and it's harder now than it was a week ago. But in the last 3 months, there wasn't any process like this. There was nobody actually who has the hat and says, I am the EU representative to make sure that any question by Amnesty International, any question by lawyers, any question by asylum workers in Greece is answered. Because it's in the end asylum case workers who need to make the decision, say this is safe, and they need to have the evidence and be able to trust this. And thirdly, despite the very many traumatic developments in Turkey and the concerns about human rights in Turkey, everything that Piri was talking about, we must recognize that when it comes to refugees, the EU is not in a position to lecture to the Turks, who are the country with most refugees in the world today. Now, are things difficult in Turkey? Yes. They would be in any country in the world. They are much worse in Lebanon, much worse in Jordan. Should the EU help Turkey? Yes. Giving money to Turkey for schools and healthcare for Syrian and other refugees is not dirty money. This is not a dirty deal. Should the EU fulfill its promise of resettling refugees from Turkey, taking a few 100,000 people, in particular all those women and children who already have a relative in Europe, who are most desperate to get back on the boat because they have family in Sweden, Germany, Austria, elsewhere? Yes. Now, this was planned, was discussed, was promised to the Turkish authorities. It needs to happen. And Greece is one of the countries that should, together with a few others, constantly ask for this to happen. Because Greece is the most concerned if Turkey feels that the promises are not fulfilled. Now, if this comes together, we have a deal, an agreement, a statement that is still not perfect, but that is much better than Plan B, and definitely much better for Greece.
Wow. I'm happy that I don't represent the Greek government. But I represent the mayor of Athens. I would like to welcome you all to Athens. I hope you enjoy your stay. Commenting on the deal, I think that the first panel covered that, but just a few remarks. When the deal was, or the statement was on the table, where was Greece? Well, Greece was not present. We were not invited to participate in the negotiation. So this is another European-style negotiation type of deal, and you know, the Dutch presidency, the Germans, the Commission, that's it. Second, and I will close with that, are we going to correct a mistake with another mistake? I don't know. We have a deal. Is it good to stop it? I can agree with Gerald. We have to see. I don't have a very good answer. So I will leave it to that. Tomorrow I think that the minister will be here, so he will be probably more competent to answer all your questions, and because he represents the government. Again, welcome to Athens, enjoy your stay, and see you soon.
I would like to add just a few more words at the end of this round. As you must have noticed, most of our guests from Turkey couldn't make it. They were prevented from leaving their country at the last minute. You see it in your participant list. Some of them we met in Vienna and we became friends and we remained in contact. And I didn't want to leave this podium without saying that we all feel their absence here, that we are really sorry for that, that we feel that we're losing out without their contributions, and that we send our greetings and best wishes. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we could take a few questions now. Please state your name and the media you represent.
There is an information which is not confirmed from UNHCR that the head of DGMM was suspended the day before yesterday during the general crackdown on the public sector in Turkey. The DGMM is the body responsible for examining international protection issues. I again say that I couldn't confirm this from a second source, but then again it's interesting to what extent do you believe that the situation in Turkey could actually hamper the capacity of the country to stand up to the commitments it has done related to the EU-Turkey statement and be able to take on an individual basis and protect the people that could be returned?
Who should answer?
Who would take this answer, please?
Just to continue,
well, I think we don't know yet what will happen I think we have to insist that, as Gerald now said, and somebody in the European Union, and that's also the different committees, and there's another member also here from the Libe committee, both in the European Parliament, that the rules are respected by all countries. Although European countries themselves don't respect the rules, but nevertheless, I think that is absolutely important that the rules in Turkey are respected. If one or the other person is not our influence, but that the rules have to be respected and the human rights situation of the refugees have to be respected is absolutely necessary, and probably there's even more control and more supervision necessary now than before the tragic events of the last days.
This specific case, I don't know, but of course we have seen, especially also in the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Education, tremendous amounts of layoffs. I think by now 50,000. To be specific, I don't think that it will have a big deal on the agreement between the EU and Turkey on refugees. But of course, in general, all this restructuring, when the schools are restarting in September, the military, of course, where you see 1/3 of the generals having been now under custody in arrest. Of course, in many other fields, it will have an impact for sure. But this is not something we can blame at this moment the Turkish government for. But on the deal on the refugees, the agreement, I don't think it will have an effect.
Anything to add to this question? No? Other questions? Yes?
It's actually relevant. The thing is that you understand that what is happening now will have implications in the implementation, because Greece is blamed for not returning people, Syrian refugees to Turkey. Now, we have all the journalists, I think, that we have searched. We know that there is no way of returning because there is no authority to contact our authorities in order to have the return. So we have problems, and I think that those are going to be more increased. What is the plan for that? Is there any plan? It's a change of a state. You have to deal with a different state from tomorrow. So have you had any feedback from Turkey if for the government and for the interest that this government now has will change what has already been told? I don't know.
To whom are you addressing this question?
To all of them.
To all of them?
To all of them, except Mr. Papagiannakis, because I think...
Mr. Knaus, could you please take this?
Well, listen, I think what is going on in Turkey now, it's very unpredictable, but one thing is certain, and I've lived in Turkey for many, many years and follow the situation closely. What is seen now is an intensification of something that has been there for a long time, which is a battle inside the institutions. I mean, I give you just, and the refugee issue for the Turks is one of the smallest problems, of course. I give you just one example. In theory, the president is in charge of the armed forces in Turkey. In theory, he's supposed to be the ultimate decider, also under Turkish law. But as we saw, his key military advisors are among the people that were just being arrested, allegedly, because they were part of a conspiracy. In fact, we knew for a long time that in Turkey there is no effective civilian control of the armed forces. What the Prime Minister Erdogan and now President Erdogan succeeded in doing was intimidate the armed forces, frighten them, and play them off against each other. But if you look at this Ministry of Defense, for example, this has not ever been an effective civilian Ministry of Defense. I mean, the core staff in the Ministry of Defense in Turkey are career soldiers who go in from the armed forces and leave to go back to the armed forces. They are part of the chain of command of the general staff. So that means that at this moment you have a situation where the most powerful man in Turkey actually doesn't know what's going on in his own military. At a moment when there is a war in Syria, a war in Iraq, fighting in Southeast Anatolia, terrorism. Now that is an environment in which what looks like a very strong, I am in control kind of personality, actually, in my views, the biggest problem in Turkey is the weakness of all the institutions. Because real strength you get through legitimacy, through democratic control. And that you haven't had in Turkey ever. Now, if we don't build this up in all these different institutions, in the judiciary, in the police, Turkey will in fact look like this big, strong state to the outside. But how can you even work with the police? Which policeman can you trust? Which prosecutor can you trust? Every prosecutor with an important case that I followed in the last 5 years is now himself or herself in jail. So this is a problem for every aspect of the Turkish administration, and it is an argument the EU should use when it talks to the Turks, and to talk to the government in particular. What you are now doing is, in fact, you're playing Russian roulette, because at a moment when Turkey needs a credible, rule of law-based administration and state, Turkey is actually disintegrating from the inside. And all this image of strength, I think, is a deception.
What I could, in addition to what Gerald Knaus said, I think one of the things that the EU could decide is not to do returns until there is a state of emergency. There is no such decision yet, but I can imagine that this is one of the options which is being discussed, especially when it comes, of course, to people who are entitled to international protection. Is the different state? I don't think so. I think it would have been a different state if the military coup would have succeeded. We would be sitting here with an even much worse outlook than we are today. This is not to say that the developments in Turkey are positive, not at all, but a successful military coup would have put a definite end to the democratic path of Turkey, and at least we now still have some hope that Turkey will return to that path. Another thing, of course, the dealing with the 8 alleged coup plotters here in Greece, and the request by Turkey to extradite them is, of course, certainly going to cause some bilateral, possibly tensions between Greece and Turkey in the coming weeks, which could have an effect. I don't know, but this is definitely something we are looking into. And of course, there are Turkish officers here as part of the EU-Turkey deal on some of the islands who, if I'm correct, have also been asked to return to Ankara for now. So this could be a part of the effect. And to be honest, on your question also on Turkish refugees, we're all the time talking about Syrians or Iraqis or Afghans coming. And we realized, I think, already before this attempt, we already saw sometimes in smaller numbers Kurds coming, Turkish Kurds arriving on some of the islands, and knowing, of course, what is happening in Turkey, and if this destabilization, polarization is continuing, of course, this can be a serious effect. I don't think these are the people who will try to arrive by boat on the Greek island, but that there are many people considering leaving Turkey if things get worse. That is certainly something the EU has to count with. Yeah.
Sir, please.
Yes. My name is, am I heard?
Yes.
My name is Yannis Christovergis. I am a journalist from the Spanish news agency FM. And my question is, if Turkey retires from the EU-Turkey agreement as an answer to critics to human rights violations from part of EU, are there thoughts of another plan B? Not the plan B with the European frontiers in the north of Greece, of course. Thank you.
Swoboda, would you like to?
Well, as I said before, the plan B is a mixture of chaos and right-wing extreme governments and measures which would really undermine the human rights standards, because that has to be clear. That this undermining is, there are people waiting for that Turkey answers like that, and there are people try to provoke Turkey beyond what is necessary criticism in order to have then the plan B implemented. I think on Turkey we have to differentiate 3 levels of talks. The one is on the refugee issue. The other is the talk about future membership of Turkey as a candidate. Unfortunately, but maybe unavoidable, the 2 things were mixed. And therefore we come now in this difficult question, for example, on the question of visa liberalization. Now we can complain who is responsible that it is not coming as quickly as Turkey, as we. Maybe it would be good for some people who want to leave Turkey to have visa liberalization. On the other hand, of course, there will be not much support in the European Union to give visa liberalization to a country in a state of emergency and a situation as it is. And the third level is, of course, Turkey as a neighbor who has a development where more and more human rights are violated. Not only about the Kurdish issue, but many civil servants, teachers, and so on. And again, and I think Piri mentioned that before, if you compare the state of emergency in France and in Turkey, and I'm not very fond of the state of emergency in France, it doesn't help anyway, but France did not sack thousands of people of Muslim religion from schools. France did not say you cannot leave the country, and so on. So these measures are totally unacceptable. But it must be clear that even if we realize more and more, unfortunately, that the way towards future membership of Turkey is more and more blocked by Turkey itself, it is also and was also blocked from the side of the European Union, that does not prevent to talk with Turkey concerning that deal. And the last element I just wanted to say, we need Turkey for finding a solution. In Syria, there is no solution possible if there is not in some way Turkey engaged. So it would be absolutely crazy to say, okay, Turkey did that and Erdogan did that, that's over, and is no longer any partner for us. Because what has been also discussed in the first podium and also in Vienna already and will be discussed all the time, the only solution concerning the Syrian refugees, at least, not the refugee problem in general, is to have peace or at least some truce in Syria and of course Iraq and so on, and to combat ISIS. But this cannot be done without Turkey. Secondly, we need a solution for the Kurdish issue also outside Turkey. If we can't find a solution also for the Syrian Kurds, and not so much for the Iraqi Kurds because there is some sort of solution, if we cannot find some sort of federation of different Kurdish regions inside different countries, we can forget about peace and stability in the region. But that is not possible if there is no agreement with Turkey. Now you can say we are depending on Turkey, but Turkey is a big country in a very fragile situation in our immediate neighborhood. Therefore, I think we should separate the elements. Turkey as a partner, at least as long also as is in the NATO, as a partner for finding peace and stability in the region. And that includes, of course, also the refugee issue, Turkey as a candidate country, and of course the human rights situation in Turkey. If we mix everything together, and if we only see the deplorable human rights situation and say, okay, that's nothing for talking for us, then the crisis will go on, and the refugee flows will go on, and then we will have a disastrous effect inside the European Union with many violations inside the European Union of basic standards on human rights.
Something to add? No? Any other questions, please? Yes?
Hello, my name is George. I introduced myself earlier. As this is a mayor's conference, I would like to ask the participants, and especially the people on the panel, how much support is being given through the EU-Turkey agreement and through structural funding to actual mayors on both sides of the Aegean, and how much interaction is there between mayors, say from Kilis all the way to Stockholm? Because it's the mayors who are the frontline actors and they're doing an incredible job. And it just seems that there's not that much support going into infrastructural support, going into integration mechanisms. So how much support is there going to be, and how much are you willing to spend on it? Thanks.
Very briefly before the others come in, it's a disastrous policies because European Union very often does not take into account what is really done by mayors in many countries. And as we heard also in Greece, that besides the limitation which were mentioned by the so-called memorandum in Greece, which is in any way a disaster according to my opinion, and I said it all the time in the last years, I think Turkey is doing something in their own country, but I think money, as has been said, has to be used also for giving mayors the chance to answer, and that has to be done also in Greece. You know perfectly well that in Greece itself, the situation between central government and the municipalities is not one of giving enough power and influence and possibilities to the municipalities. One country who did something specifically for cities was, for example, Germany. Germany recognized that the major task in their own country, in Germany itself, is done by cities and by the mayors, and therefore had a special program. If it's enough or not, you can discuss. But I think what would be necessary in all the countries concerned is a specific program to give mayors the chance to deal with it, because we see if mayors take the chance, also in countries where you have very skepticism, they can even win elections after integrating a lot of refugees in their communities if they have the chance to do something, and that needs, of course, also financial support. So the European Union in general should be much more attentive to those who really do the job of European integration and integration of refugees, and that are the cities and the municipalities and the mayors.
Perhaps a last question? No? So thank you very much. Thank you all. There is a press release in English and in Greek in our press desk, and it will be distributed to your emails within the next few hours. Thank you very much.